I broke my rule of trusting only myself only once, and that's when everything went wrong. Listen to the end to find out what happened because of my one mistake. I remember how the dust puffed up when I flipped the couch cushions, little clouds catching the weak afternoon light through the living room window. I wasn't even mad at the kids for turning the whole couch into a Lego battlefield again. It was routine, just one of those quiet Saturdays with nowhere to be. I tugged at the fabric flap in the back corner, and that's when something dropped and bounced once before settling flat on the hardwood with a soft clack. My wife's phone. I wouldn't have even noticed it if the screen hadn't come to life with a ping. The message glowed sharp and unapologetic. Today at 3 o'clock, like last time. Just faster. I didn't breathe. Just stood there, frozen, watching the beer and palm tree emoji like they were some kind of code. Maybe they were. Maybe I was still dumb enough to think it was nothing. But then I slipped the phone back where I found it, carefully, silently, and I went upstairs to get the kids. Told them we were going to the mall. Told them they could pick out anything from the toy store. I didn't tell them I just needed to sit in the parking lot for an hour and let everything sink in. The kids ran wild in the mall while I stayed in the car, parked facing the long stretch of lot, trying to make sense of what I'd seen. B, that could have been anyone. But it wasn't just the letter. It was the symbols. Beer and palm tree, like a lazy inside joke. My mind ran through every B we knew. Blake from her gym, Barry, her old classmate, Brandon from the coffee shop, and then something clicked like a slow, poison drop. Brett, her boss, the one with the two perfect teeth and that whiskey-smooth voice, the one who toasted us at our wedding with a drink he imported special, the one who gave her a backhanded compliment about her dress being braver than expected, the one she said invited me to play golf but stood too close behind her when she helped him line up a shot, the one who shook my hand with just a little too much eye contact. And that jacket, that sleek black mountain parka I found in the closet last month. Her side of the closet. She swore she got it on sale, said it was unisex. But I remember Brett wearing that same damn jacket during our weekend cabin trip, the one we documented with way too many photos. I opened the family album when we got back home, flipped to the Evening in the Mountains page. There he was, right beside her, his hand on the small of her back, angled just slightly out of frame. Her leaning in, smiling too widely. That same jacket. I'd never worn it in my life. The rest of the night passed like I was watching someone else live it. Dinner, baths, bedtime. Alice laughed a little too brightly, like her jokes were trying to fill some crack in the drywall. I nodded at the right times, kissed her cheek, said I was tired. I stayed up late staring at nothing, listening, feeling, knowing. I didn't ask her about the message. Didn't ask her why she wore that perfume tonight, the one she used to save for our anniversaries. I just lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, while she drifted off beside me, still smelling like something she didn't earn. The next morning, I dropped the kids at my sister's, told her I had a surprise errand, drove across town with a bottle of whiskey and a gift bag. Same brand Brett toasted us with at the wedding. His office was modern, glass and steel pretending to be humble. I stepped in with a smile that wasn't real. Thought I'd stop by, I said. Like old times. He blinked, surprised but not suspicious. We sat down and the whiskey made him loosen up fast. I let him ramble. About work. About the gallery project they were funding. Then I dropped it, just lightly like I wasn't digging. How's Amelia? I asked. Your sister, right? Cute kid back at the wedding. What is she now, 20-something? He laughed. 27, he said proudly. Manages one of those local city artsy things. He didn't see the little hook slide under his skin. I found her the next day. Turns out she was managing a new public installation 2 blocks from my office. I stopped by on accident. Said I was a graphic designer looking for a project. I asked about her paintings, complimented the way she used color to control mood. She lit up like someone finally saw her. It took 3 days to turn our professional conversations into something casual. 7 days until we were texting late into the night. 3 weeks before we were inseparable. A month and she invited me to her place. I didn't tell her my name, just used the one on my design business card. J. Hayes. It was technically real, just a layer removed from the truth. She never pressed. That night, when it happened, when she leaned in, searching my eyes for permission, I gave her what she was already looking for. And afterward, while she was asleep against my shoulder, I slipped my phone from my jeans, aimed the camera upward, and snapped a photo. Her lips on mine. One of her paintings in the background. The one with the broken bird cage and the feathers scattered like memories. I uploaded the photo to a burner email and hit send. Recipient, Brett. Subject, small world. No message, just the image. Her, me, United States. Sealed in color and light. I didn't sleep that night either. Not because I was guilty, because it was only the beginning. Amelia loved candlelight, said it made rooms feel honest, like nothing could hide in the glow. I'd sit in her kitchen, shadows curling over the tile, sipping wine while she spoke about brushstrokes, gallery politics, and scaffolding permits. She was raw and real, the opposite of Alice, who'd made our home into a museum of fake laughter and pre-approved affection. But even as I laughed with Amelia, I wasn't present the way she believed. I was calculating. Every smile she gave me turned into fuel. Each conversation was a brushstroke on the masterpiece of collapse I was still painting, with Brett at the center. The reply from Brett came 2 days after the photo. Just one period. No words, no explanation. Just a single dot. Quiet panic. He didn't follow up. Didn't even block the email. But I watched his life begin to slow bleed. Social media, dead. Alice jittery and distant. Her work hours started stretching, and she kept double-checking her phone like it held secrets. I didn't confront her. I observed. Let her script her own downfall while I smiled like everything was fine. Then Amelia asked if I'd like to meet her family. Her parents were warm, casual, kind. The type of people who remembered your drink order and never made you feel like a stranger. Brett sat across from me, pale and tight-lipped. His hand trembled when I reached for my wallet and a photo slipped out accidentally. It was the one of me kissing Amelia under her painting. He grabbed it before anyone could react. His face went still, color draining as fast as his excuses. "That's us," Amelia said, smiling. "One of our first dates." He didn't speak, just stared. That night I uploaded screenshots to the family group chat. Messages between Brett and a mystery woman. Explicit texts, hotel meetups, photos he probably forgot even existed. I didn't sign the message. I didn't have to. His mother responded with a full breakdown. His father wrote one sentence. "You disgrace our name." Amelia read them all, then curled against me, silent, crying into my chest. She didn't ask if I had sent them. She didn't have to. With Brett shaken, I turned back toward Alice. She still wore the mask of a wife, cooking, smiling, asking hollow questions. But I saw the lies building up behind her eyes. Her phone never left her side. Her perfume had changed. Subtle, but I noticed. It was the same one she wore at our wedding. I needed help. So I messaged Amber, Alice's cousin, the one Alice always called clingy or low tier. Amber was eager, too eager. We met at a bookstore cafe. She wore red lipstick like it was war paint. When I said my name, she smiled like she'd waited years to be included in something that mattered. "She's fake," Amber said without hesitation. "People just pretended not to notice." We drafted a letter together to Alice's mother. It wasn't gossip. It was a roadmap. Times, receipts, locations where Brett and Alice both happened to be. It was layered, subtle, too detailed to be a coincidence. We mailed it anonymously. A week later, my mother-in-law called. Her voice sounded like someone who'd been slapped across the face by the truth. "You broke the family," she hissed. That same day, Alice fell apart. Her charity team dropped her. Her sister ghosted her. She sobbed in the kitchen, swearing she didn't know what was happening, asking why people were turning on her. I kissed her forehead, then left the room without a word. 2 days later, Brett showed up outside Amelia's gallery. No appointment, no warning. He looked wrecked. He tried to pull her aside, said something like, "He's not who you think," but it didn't matter. She'd already decided what kind of man I was, the kind who stayed while her brother fled. That night, I drove her to a field I once dreamed of building on. She stepped out of the car slowly, the wind catching her hair. "This is your land," she asked. "It was supposed to be. Now, maybe it's yours." She stared at me like I'd handed her a home, not just a dream. "I just want the truth," I said. She kissed me, then whispered something I didn't expect. "I love you." And this time I didn't need to calculate. I just pulled her closer. We made love on the hood of the car, under a sky soft with the first snow, her hands warm on my skin, her breath short and real. And while the world went cold around us, I felt something steady for the first time in months. Not peace. Control. It started with a group message. I created a fake account, something neutral. No photo, no name, just a string of numbers. I added Alice's parents, Brett's family, a few mutuals who liked to gossip more than they liked loyalty. The name of the group? Truth Isn't Complicated. Then I waited. But first I set the table for chaos. I invited both families to a dinner, said it was about rebuilding trust. I used those exact words because people love the idea of healing when they don't yet know what's broken. Alice agreed quickly, almost too quickly, desperate to re-cement her image, to show everyone she was still the woman they believed in. Brett said yes with a single emoji, a clinking glass, like he thought we were still playing pretend. I chose the restaurant carefully, not too fancy, not too casual. One of those places with dim lighting and expensive napkins, where people felt obligated to behave politely even when knives were metaphorical. That afternoon, I visited my storage unit. Inside was a sleek wooden box I hadn't opened in years. It contained things I was never supposed to need. Printed emails, travel receipts, snapshots, and one audio clip Alice forgot I had. She once pocket-dialed me from Brett's car. 10 minutes of muffled breathing, one moment of laughter, and a sentence that still rang in my ears. "He never looks. He trusts too much." She was right once, but not anymore. I slipped the papers into my coat. Not to use. Not yet. I wanted them close. A reminder of what I'd already won and what I still had to burn down. The dinner began smoothly. Alice wore white, like some twisted version of innocence. Brett arrived last, still with that tension in his jaw that no amount of wine could soften. Amelia walked in beside me, hand in mine, glowing without even trying. Her presence was a loaded gun I hadn't needed to fire yet. Just the sight of her made Brett twitch. We were halfway through appetizers when I tapped my glass gently. "I want to thank everyone for coming tonight," I said calmly. "This isn't about drama. It's about truth. So let me give you some." I looked at Brett, then at Alice. "Your son," I said to Brett's father, "has been sleeping with my wife." Silence. Utter, surgical silence. Then the clink of a fork falling onto a plate, the scrape of a chair. Alice froze, her smile collapsing, molecule by molecule. Brett didn't even blink, just stared forward like if he didn't react, it wouldn't be real. "And now," I continued, "I'm with Amelia." Brett's father stood, red creeping up his neck. His voice cracked like a whip. "You disgrace our name." Alice's mother slammed her hand on the table. She didn't speak, just stared at her daughter like she was some stranger off the street wearing her child's face. Amelia stood beside me, calm and certain, and placed her hand on my chest. "We're stronger than all this," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. That was the moment. Not the betrayal, not the confession, but the alignment. The moment where lines were drawn, and no one could unsee what was now obvious. This wasn't a mistake. It was a pattern. And I had turned the lights on. One by one, they left. Alice last. She tried to say something, mouth twitching like she wanted to cry or scream or apologize. But the words wouldn't come. She backed away like I was a flame she never expected to feel burn. Brett didn't even look at her, didn't even stand. A week later, Alice was living in a hotel room. Her sister refused her calls. Her mother left voicemails but never followed up. At work, she was quietly removed from a project she'd championed for a year. Her name started disappearing from team emails. She was still breathing, still showing up, but her foundation had crumbled, and she didn't know where the first crack came from. She tried to talk to me one night, I was picking up the kids from her temporary rental. She opened the door and looked smaller somehow, like someone had turned the volume down on her entire existence. "Can we talk?" she asked. "We already did," I said. She looked down at her feet like they were supposed to offer her answers. "You don't have to keep punishing me." I laughed in a quiet, humorless sound. "I'm not punishing you," I said. "You're just finally feeling what you gave." Back at Amelia's, life was simple. No luxury, no dramatics, just two people with wreckage behind them and warmth between them. I cooked more. She sewed in the evenings. Her niece, a little girl she babysat sometimes, came by often, curling up beside me on the couch with storybooks like I was someone who had always been there. I felt something like peace, but I didn't trust it yet, because endings don't come that neatly, especially not when I was still building towards something final. Alice still called. Not often, but enough. She left voicemails I didn't answer, emails I didn't read. Once she even sent a letter, handwritten, ink smudged, pages creased. I burned it in the fireplace without opening it. One day Amelia asked what I wanted. "For the end," she said. "What does it look like to you?" I stared at her, and I smiled. "Not fire," I said. "Not fury." She tilted her head. Curious. "Just the truth, plain as day, with nowhere to hide." Because I wasn't done. Not yet. I had one final piece left to play. After the dinner, Alice faded. Her name slipped off project emails. Her posts dried up. Her family stopped checking in. It was the kind of silence that doesn't come from shame. It comes from exposure. She was trying to rebuild, but you can't lay a new foundation when the old one is still rotting underneath. Now it was time for quiet ruin. No explosions, no scandal. Just erosion, slow, surgical, permanent. I met Amber again, and this time, she didn't just bring gossip. She had evidence. Receipts, screenshots, locations. It read like a biography of lies. Fake meetings, expense reports that didn't match, tagged photos at the same rooftop bar Brett once bragged about. We built a report. Clean, chronological, undeniable. This time we didn't send it anonymously. We sent it to her mother. 3 days later, Alice showed up at my place, eyes red, voice shaking. "You told her," she said. "You made it look like—" "No," I said. "You did. I just stopped covering for you." She dropped to the floor, sobbing like the truth had weight. I watched her collapse under it, made no move to comfort her. The crying wasn't new, but the silence that followed, that was. She tried calling her sister that night. No answer. Her mother, straight to voicemail. She posted one of her usual brunch and self-love photos the next day. 10 likes, 1 pity comment. That was it. Alice didn't just lose her family. She lost her audience. And for her, that was worse. Brett, meanwhile, was unraveling at the edges. He sent Amelia a long email. Something about mistakes, dark moments, missing his sister. She read it once and forwarded it to me with a question. Do I reply? "No," I answered. "Let him sit with it." A few days later, I spotted him in his car parked near Amelia's apartment. Engine off. Eyes scanning the building. He wasn't hiding. He wanted to be seen. So I drove by slow, made sure we locked eyes. He didn't move, but I could see it in him. The simmering truth of a man who finally realized he'd lost the game before he knew the rules. Amber called again. "She's spiraling," she said. "Calling old friends, trying to rally support." I almost laughed. "She's trying to climb a ladder that's already burned." "You want her completely out?" Amber asked. "Not yet," I said. "But she needs to know she's not welcome back." Alice had always thought betrayal could be temporary, something to recover from with a few tears and a rebrand. But this wasn't a bruise. This was a scar. Then came Andrew, Amber's ex. Years ago, Alice tore them apart for fun, or control, or just to see if she could. But Andrew had receipts. He handed me a flash drive in a parking garage. Emails, texts, even a voicemail. "She didn't break me," he said, "but she tried." I didn't need most of it, but I saved all of it. Because people like Alice don't change. They escalate. And I was the last person she'd expect to keep records. Amelia was painting again. Bigger pieces now, sharper colors. She said I made her feel like she didn't have to dilute herself. I'd sit beside her, sketching out show proposals while her niece napped in the next room. Sometimes I wondered what would have happened if I never saw that text. Would I have stayed? Let her slowly peel me down to a life of silence? Number. It wasn't the betrayal, it was the belief that I'd never see it. Alice forgot that I watch people closer when they think I'm not watching at all. Amelia asked me one night, "What does the end look like?" "Not fire," I said. "Not yelling, just truth, and no place left to hide." Because the final move was already in motion. One more dinner, one more match, and all the bridges would finally be gone. Brett was unraveling fast. The emails slowed, then stopped. The social media presence that once revolved around motivational quotes and expensive cocktails fell quiet. When Amelia's art exhibition got featured in the city blog, he didn't congratulate her. He didn't even pretend to exist. But silence from people like Brett doesn't mean surrender. It means planning. He started calling Amelia again. First it was casual. "Hope you're well." Then came the unspoken desperation. "He's not who you think he is." He showed up outside her building, parked a block away, like that somehow made him invisible. I watched from my own car, engine running, music low, and let him sit there, a man staring at the life he used to control but no longer understood. She didn't let him in, didn't answer the calls. Instead, she asked me about him, what I thought, what I knew. I didn't give her the full truth, not yet, just enough to keep her anchored. Because love doesn't happen in sweeping gestures. It happens in the space between lies. And she was finally standing in that space. That weekend, I took her to a place I hadn't seen in years. Just off the highway, past the old gas station with the broken sign, there was a field I once dreamed would hold our future. Mine and Alice's. Before the cheating, before Brett, before the version of me that clung to obligation like it was love. Amelia stepped out of the car slowly, eyes scanning the wide-open quiet. "This is yours?" she asked. "It was going to be," I said. "Now it's yours." She looked around, and for a moment I saw something shift in her. Something break open. This wasn't a grand gesture. It was a surrender of what I thought I'd build, of what I thought I needed, of what I thought I loved. She took my hand and leaned against me. "I just want something real," she whispered, and I didn't promise her anything. I just stood there with her, while the wind bent the grass and the sky turned to late afternoon fire. That was enough. That night, we drove out past the city limits to where the stars came out without apology. We parked near the ridge, opened the doors, and sat on the hood in silence. Then she turned to me. "I love you," she said. Not like it was a question, not like it was a line, like it was something solid she could finally hand over, without fear it would be dropped. And I didn't say it back. Not yet. Instead, I kissed her. Slow, certain, honest. And when we made love right there, beneath the sky, it didn't feel like revenge. It felt like reclamation. Back in the city, Alice had started trying to claw back what she lost. She emailed her charity board to clarify misinformation. She showed up at her old firm with a forced smile and a new hairstyle, pretending like nothing had happened. But her colleagues didn't return her greetings. The meetings moved without her. Her seat was still there, physically, but no one saved it. She stopped trying after that, but she didn't disappear, because people like Alice never truly go away. She began circling the kids, asking to take them for just a few hours. At first I agreed, but every time they came home, they were quieter, more confused. "Why does Mommy cry in the car?" my daughter asked once. I didn't answer. Instead, I started preparing. Not for war, for clarity. Brett's silence ended with a single message, sent to my old number, a burner phone I hadn't used since the early stages. "What do you want?" The words of a man finally realizing he was no longer the one setting the terms. I didn't reply, because I didn't want anything from him. I already had it. His sister, his reputation, his grip on a family that no longer wanted to be associated with his name. The next week, I sat with Amelia at a new coffee shop. We didn't talk much, just shared a sandwich and watched a couple argue quietly at a nearby table. She reached over, took my hand, and traced a circle in my palm. "I feel safe with you," she said. I didn't move, didn't even blink, because that was it. That was the reward. Not the destruction, the trust. But I still had one final piece to play, one final dinner, one more gathering. This time not for clarity, not for closure, for revelation. Because all this time, Brett and Alice thought they were walking through fire. They hadn't even felt the heat yet. I booked the table weeks in advance. Not a restaurant this time. A private room at a vineyard just outside the city. Soft lights, heavy curtains, polished wood. The kind of place where people are expected to behave even when they want to scream. I sent out the invitations myself. Direct messages, formal, personal. Brett and Alice both accepted. They still didn't know they were walking into their final undoing. I didn't dress to impress. I dressed like I was already done. Amelia wore a simple black dress and a quiet kind of confidence that made everyone else look overdressed and out of place. She walked beside me like this was her story too, because by now it was. Brett arrived first, alone, eyes already narrowed, like he sensed something was off but hadn't decided if it was the wine or the air. Alice followed 10 minutes later, smiling like she was still auditioning for forgiveness. We all sat down. No pleasantries, no forced toasts, just tension, stretched so thin it vibrated through every glass on the table. I waited until the main course arrived, until the plates were down, forks lifted, wine poured. Then I stood. "I want to thank you both for coming," I said. "Tonight's not about revenge. It's about perspective, about the truth finally catching up." Brett leaned back in his chair. Alice froze, her wine glass halfway to her lips. I turned to their families, seated along both sides of the table. Siblings, parents, even a few close friends they hadn't seen in months. People who used to smile when Brett entered a room. People who used to defend Alice without question. "I've spent months watching everything fall apart," I said, voice steady. "But none of it was by accident. You weren't unlucky. You weren't misunderstood. You were dishonest. And tonight, you see what that earns." I placed 2 envelopes on the table. Thick, heavy, sealed in red wax. One for Brett, one for Alice. They didn't open them. Not yet. Everyone else just stared, waiting. Their affair wasn't a mistake. It was deliberate, long-term, built in shadows and lies. But I didn't come here to rehash what we all already suspect. I nodded toward Amelia. "I came to tell you what happens next." Then I turned to Brett. "You lost your company's top donor 6 weeks ago. Pulled their funding quietly after a whistleblower reported inappropriate travel reimbursements." I was that whistleblower. His mouth opened, but no words came out. "Alice," I said, turning slowly, "the board didn't vote you out because of rumors. They did it because they received a full dossier. Expenses, messages, receipts, delivered anonymously. I wrote every page." She dropped her fork. No one spoke. The silence wasn't shock. It was confirmation. They'd all suspected. They just needed permission to admit it. I looked down at the envelopes. "You can open those later, or not. Either way, you'll find copies of the evidence, legal filings, and letters of intent. This isn't the beginning of a war. It's the last page of your old story." Amelia stood with me. "I'm with her now," I said plainly. No apology, no gloating, just fact. Brett's father stood, quiet, but firm. "You've brought shame to this family," he said, looking at his son. "Not because you cheated, but because you thought you were untouchable." Alice's mother wept silently into her napkin. One by one, they left. Some said nothing. Others offered short, bitter nods in my direction. Not out of malice, but acknowledgement. That I'd done what needed to be done. That I hadn't shouted or burned it all down. I'd just shown the truth in the clearest light. Alice didn't say a word. Brett just stared at the floor. The last to go was Amelia. She turned to me as the doors closed behind the final guest and whispered, "It's done." But it wasn't, not entirely. Because endings aren't always explosions. Sometimes they're just echoes that never stop bouncing off empty walls. A few days later, Alice called. I didn't answer, but I read the voicemail. She wanted to see the kids. Said she missed them. Said they were all she had left. I replied with a message of my own. You had your chance. You didn't want a family. You wanted a spotlight. And now that light's gone. The new apartment wasn't much. 2 bedrooms, clean floors, sunlight that showed up even when I didn't ask it to. No marble countertops, no curated art. Just honesty in every creak, every imperfect edge. I didn't need more than that. Amelia didn't either. She filled the place with little touches, throw blankets, painted mugs, a sewing machine in the corner where she stitched quiet into fabric. I worked from the kitchen table most days, sketching design drafts, updating her portfolio site, rebuilding everything I'd put aside for years. We weren't rich, but we weren't pretending, and that made it feel like luxury. On weekends, her niece would visit, 6 years old, sharp and wild, the kind of kid who asked questions you couldn't answer with grown-up lies. She'd run into my arms like I'd always been there. No blood between us, but none of that mattered. I read her bedtime stories while Amelia leaned in the doorway, half smiling like she already saw something I hadn't said out loud yet. The first time I felt peace was a Thursday. I was watching them from the hallway. Amelia, barefoot, braiding her niece's hair, humming something low and wordless. There was nothing dramatic about the moment. That's what made it hit so hard. I wasn't chasing anything. I wasn't hiding. I was present, for the first time in years. Alice called again that night. I didn't answer. She tried texting. I want to see them, please. Not the kids, not their names. Just them, like they were still accessories to a life she no longer had the password for. I typed out a reply. Not angry, not bitter, just final. You wanted attention, not a family, and now I give my attention to the people who never asked for it, but deserve it. Then I turned off the phone, sat beside Amelia. She didn't ask what the message was about. She didn't need to. She just took my hand, rested her head on my shoulder and said, "Come on, you've got to see this." We climbed the stairs to the roof. The wind was cold. The city was quiet. The sun hadn't fully risen yet, but the sky had started to shift. That soft blue that only comes just before the gold. We didn't say anything. We just stood there, wrapped in the silence, breathing in something that felt like a beginning. It had been a full year since the couch cushion, the phone, the message with a beer emoji and a palm tree, since the moment everything collapsed. And now, standing under the dawn, I didn't miss a single piece of it. Not the house, not the wedding photos, not the woman who thought betrayal could be hidden under perfume and polite smiles. That part of my life was a story I no longer read, just a memory with no voice left in it. Amelia touched my jaw, traced the small scar near my ear. The one I got trying to fix a cabinet door during the old days, back when I still believed effort meant something. She didn't say anything poetic. She just kissed me. Software grounded. True. Brett left the city. Last I heard, he was managing a minor real estate firm in Arizona, trying to build something on land no one wanted. His name still showed up in a few emails, LinkedIn updates, conference invites, but no one responded anymore. Just another man who thought charm could outlast consequence. Alice moved in with a friend, tried launching a blog. It didn't last. Without attention, her world folded in on itself. She still tried sometimes. Holiday messages, likes on old photos. Little sparks meant to test if the fire was still there. But the matchbox was empty. There was nothing left to burn. I kept the photo. The first one, the one of me and Amelia, standing in front of her painting, lips inches apart, her eyes closed like she already knew what would come next. It wasn't just proof. It was a timestamp. A moment when everything shifted, when the weight fell away. It hung in our hallway now. Not front and center, not loud, just there. Quiet and real. Sometimes I'd pass it without thinking. Other times I'd stop, just for a second. Not to remember the pain, but to remember how it ended. Because this wasn't a story about revenge. It was about clarity, about rebuilding, about watching every fake piece fall, and finally, refusing to pick them back up. I had spent too long being the man people leaned on, lied to, walked past, and underestimated. Now I was something else entirely. Not angry, not broken, just whole. And she was gone, and I was still here, exactly where I chose to be. That's all for now, folks. Thank you for being with me today and listened. And if you liked my story, please subscribe, hit the like button, and comment below what you think about all this, and what would you do if you were me. Also, don't forget to check my other stories in description below.